Mr. Manish Sisodia, the Deputy Chief Minister of Delhi, Mr. Ramesh Ramanathan, Swati Ramanathan, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. My view always has been that cities are the centers of innovation, they're the centers of growth, they're the centers of a lot of dynamism in our society today. Cities actually occupy just 3% of the earth land mass, but they account for almost 80% of the global growth. Today almost about 70% of the people live in cities, but cities are also responsible for almost 75% of the CO2 emissions. The process of urbanization has ended across America, it's ended across Europe, it's nearing its completion in China. This process has just begun in India. If you go by the latest McKinsey study, by 2050 India will see 700 million people getting into the process of urbanization. Every minute while we speak here, there are 30 Indians who are moving from rural areas to urban areas. And therefore, it is very important that we do innovative and sustainable urbanization. The process of urbanization is inevitable to my mind. If you drive from Delhi to Jaipur, you will see urbanization is happening, and it's happening in a very, very unplanned and unsustainable manner. And therefore, we need to do very, very sustainable urbanization. We need to do it in a planned manner. India has historically been a very, very reluctant urbanizer. We have been a reluctant urbanizer because there are very few politicians who come from urban cities. Prior to independence, C. Rajagopalachari, Rajendra Prasad, Motilal Nehru had been mayors of their respective cities. But post-independence, we didn't have politicians who represented the urban constituency in the parliament. Actually, it's only recently that we've had politicians coming from urban areas and emerging as leaders in their own right. And therefore, we have to give increased voice to the process of urbanization. Because if India is growing at about 7.6% per annum, but our ambition and hunger is to grow at 9 to 10% over a 3-decade period, to be able to lift a very young population above the poverty line, that will never happen till we don't do good systematic urbanization. And this would really require that we do good planning, we create good quality trunk infrastructure, that we recycle our water, we recycle our waste, we use technology to leapfrog. And many of these lessons don't come from the western part of the world. When the West was urbanizing, land, gas and water were all cheaply available. And because they were cheaply available, America had the luxury of living in New Jersey, traveling to New York, traveling by limousines, guzzling gas. It had the luxury because gas and land and all were easily available. It had the luxury of creating a city like Atlanta where 99% of the people travel by car. And therefore the American part of the world created some of the most polluting cities of the world. But today, now that model has already been copied by China. But today land, gas and water are very scarce commodity, and they'll be increasingly scarce commodity in India, and therefore we need to do far more compact, we need to do dense urbanization, but we need to do it on the back of public transportation. And my view always has been that a great city is one which has very good public transportation and a city which is capable of having cycling and walking. A city must enable its citizens to do cycling and walking, and actually 60 to 70% of the people must be able to travel by public transportation. And many of these lessons come from the eastern part of the world in terms of water management, better water management, comes from Singapore, on how almost 10% of the water which is non-usable is actually used for human consumption, what they call the new water. Great experience they come from a city called Yokohama, where a woman mayor was able to reduce waste by almost 39%. Or they come from a city like Kitakyushu in Japan, where the women of Kitakyushu rose in revolt in late 70s. Kitakyushu actually had driven the process of urbanization, but the Dukai Bay on which it is based had become absolutely yellow from blue, and the women rose in revolt, and NITI worked in partnership with them to create one of the smartest cities, which is a recyclable city, totally recyclable city. Now, I admire what Janaagraha has done, and this is to constantly rank cities, and it shows how dismally Indian cities perform. Even the best performing city like Trivandrum, where I've lived for a very long period of my life, I've lived over more than a decade there and worked there, is ranked number 1 but just scores 4.4. Pune scores 4.2 when you benchmark it against some of the better cities of the world. Now, my belief is that it's very important to constantly do this evaluation on a regular basis. Now, Janaagraha has on its own basis been doing this on a regular basis and been putting this out in public domain so that we can actually, a process of ranking is like naming and shaming a city and putting it in public domain. And my view is that it's important that these process of evaluation and ranking are done professionally by third parties and not by government. There's a huge conflict of interest if government does it, but government should act as a facilitator, catalyst, and assist Janaagraha to do this and help them to put it out in public domain. And my view is that this must be done on a real-time basis, on a minute-to-minute, day-to-day basis, and therefore there's a need to create a portal, and so that cities compete on a regular, constant basis and see them either going up or going down, and actually on a regular basis, citizens of a city must know how badly their cities are performing. And therefore, the more we publicize Janaagraha's finding, especially in cities which are performing badly, so that the citizens of that city do not go back and vote the same elected government back into power if the city is ranked badly in Janaagraha's ranking. And therefore, this is a great, great service which Janaagraha has done. And I think all of us need to thank them. We need to work in partnership with them. We need to assist and facilitate them so that the urban governance agenda comes center stage. And unless it doesn't come center stage, it will be very difficult to drive India's growth and to make India a center of innovation, a center of creativity, and a center of dynamism. And there's a huge opportunity. There's a huge opportunity because for the first time we are talking about smart cities, we are talking about the process of Amrit, the scheme of Amrit, and first time the process, we realize that while the process of urbanization across the world has finished, in India it has just begun. And therefore there's a huge opportunity for India to do a unique process of urbanization, and that is to be extremely innovative, extremely sustainable. And I think many of these outcomes which have been laid down in Janaagraha can form the basic benchmark of this. So I take this opportunity of congratulating Janaagraha. I particularly congratulate Swati for doing some remarkable work in the field of urbanization. I've seen what they've tried to do in Bangalore, but I think it's very important that some of us partner them to take this forward in a much more vigorous and much more professional manner. Ramesh wanted me to talk about a little bit of financing and so on. See, my belief is one of the key challenges for India. One is the challenge of existing cities to revitalize them, which is being what is attempted to be done through smart cities. And the other is the process of new urbanization. And I think both have to run concurrently. The Delhi-Mumbai corridor and the Amritsar-Calcutta corridor provide a huge opportunity because today goods take about 14 days goods produced in the northern part of India, they take about 14 days to reach the ports on the western coast of India. But by 2018, you will have the dedicated freight corridor, which will put goods within 14 hours. So from 14 days to 14 hours will be the paradigm shift. But what the dedicated freight corridor does is it opens up a completely new route between Delhi and Mumbai, and similarly on the Amritsar-Calcutta route, and later on the Chennai-Bangalore route, that will open up vast areas for new urbanization in India. Now, how does one do new urbanization? And it's important to work in partnership with the states to identify lands, as we've done. We identified lands. We then planned out these lands, and then we created SPVs between the center and the state on a 50-50 or a 51-49 basis. Now the challenge is that the legislative process today, the existing legislation does not have a provision where you can create new cities, which can be vibrant, dynamic bodies. And one of the major reasons why the process of urbanization has been retarded in India is because all urban areas have been controlled by this. I mean, look at Mumbai, look at Calcutta. They are virtually run by the state governments. So there's no autonomy and there's no direct elections of mayors, and therefore you don't have continuity of mayors for over a long period of time. And there's no direct election. So one of the key things we did while doing the newer process of urbanization was that we said that the power must be vested in that new SPV between the center and the state while it is creating new trunk infrastructure. And we looked at several provisions. We didn't find very much, but we looked at 74th Amendment provided us the provision of 243Q of the Act, and under 243Q there's a provision for creating industrial cities, much like how Jamshedpur was created. So we looked at 243Q to create that SPV. Now, once the SPV was created, then we went in for the trunk infrastructure. When you do new infrastructure, the challenge for new urbanization is that you should be able to monetize land value. Nowhere in the world has monetization worked where we have not been able to monetize land values, and therefore it's very important that tariffs must be able to rise in accordance with inflation. The city must have adequate resources to provide good services to the citizens. And therefore, we use that process. We said that we'll create the process of urbanization. We'll do the initial trunk infrastructure, but the city must break even at some point of time. And different cities, when you do the evaluation, different cities break even at different periods. Even new cities break even in some cities, depending on the geographical size and area. Some cities break even in 11th year. A larger city like Dholera breaks even in 17th year. But then the city, when they are back-ended, once you've created the trunk infrastructure and you've created good quality trunk infrastructure and laid smart cities fibers below the ground, and this is a city where we have created 6 layers of trunk infrastructure below. When the revenues start flowing, they start flowing in very large amounts. And the challenge is that you should have a city which is not just for purpose. There's no city in the world which has succeeded without being which is not integrated. Means there must be an industrial activity, there must be a service activity, there must be a housing activity, and there must be areas for good, large green areas which will enable good quality living to take place. So I think a lot of that experiment is underway, but my belief always is that a city must be commercially viable to provide good services to its citizens, and the city must eventually be managed by the direct elections which must take place, so that the elected people must be held responsible for managing that city. Thank you very much.